Okay. Go live. Yeah, just come on. There we go. Hey, we're up. All right. All right. Hey, we're up. We're up around. Okay, great, fantastic. And I see Anna Sylvia there in the chat room. Hi, Anna. Okay, so, gentlemen, we need a theme song. We need a theme song for this show. Dun, 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 dun. Something that won't get me in trouble.
Yeah.
No, not like last time.
Let me figure something out.
Well, we have to find something that's like royalty free, and doesn't have any free to use copyright. Just say, oh, by the way, here's my music. The music provided by blah blah blah.
I'll put my kids in charge.
Yeah, they'll find me something. Okay. My brother would, my son would like it if it was by Sabaton, but that's okay. nothing like Swedish death metal. Anyway. Anyway, well, welcome everyone online and the two gentlemen here with me to the February meeting of the ITD Photo Club. As I said in the last meeting, we are kicking off the cycle again for our beginners and to refresh everybody on the basics. We also do have, since it's an evening class, we have more time. We have time to do an advanced user section for those of you that are willing to give the trickier bits a shot. So we are streaming live. We have good streaming health according to YouTube. Is that right, Anna? Is it working okay? Just text me a message and let me know. Okay? Anyway, I need more screens to do this because I need like one to control the slideshow and another one to be able to see the stuff for the YouTube. But anyway, we carry on. All right, so starting with the beginners class, we're going to start going over, move this over here, we're going to go over camera basics. Camera basics. Come on, next one. Here we go. All right, so, hey Joe, you're welcome to join us.
Oh, that's okay.
So, getting down to the basics. So, so the class is geared towards digital cameras. Everything I'm talking about can be applied to film. Okay? However, film has its advantages and its limitations, just like digital does. And this is not on the slide deck, so I'm just going to elaborate. You have to kind of pick and choose your shots with film because at best you get 36 shots on a roll. And you won't know if it's good until you have it developed. And that...
Are there companies still there to develop?
Yes, there are still labs. You can go to Pittman Photo has a photo lab for film. There's still photo labs. There's also some mail order places that you can go and send your film in to get it developed. Costco still does it. Yes, Costco still does it. So, yes, you can go. I will be enjoying my coffee. Anyway. So, but we're going to focus on digital cameras here because, one, it's a lot cheaper. B, you get a lot more chances to take the shot without having to worry about running out of film. C, once your card is full, you can erase it and use it again. Hey, so the economics of scale work for us on this, especially when we want to take lots and lots and lots of pictures to try and get better at this thing. So, modern digital cameras fall into three broad categories. Okay, you have DSLR and mirrorless cameras. DSLR standing for digital single lens reflex, which means single lens reflex comes from the film days, and that's a camera that has a mirror and a prism that allows you to see through the lens you're taking the picture with. Now, this may strike you as odd. Because pretty much all cameras do that now. But there are cameras that don't. For example, rangefinder cameras have a separate viewfinder from the lens, and you're not seeing through the lens, you see through a viewfinder, and what the viewfinder will have in it is frame lines telling you how big your lens is how much of the scene your camera is encompassing. So you won't, like if you put a telephoto lens, you won't get a close-up view of whatever it is you're shooting at. You get a tiny little box in the viewfinder. It's kind of like that Daffy Duck cartoon where the artist was messing with him. Turns out the artist later on was Bugs Bunny. And he gets knocked out of an airplane, falls into the ocean, and there's an island in the background. And he goes, "Yeah, give me a close-up!" And he goes, "Nying," and it just zooms, like it just closes all the way down on this. He's like, "This is a close-up?" So yeah, this is what a rangefinder does. Instead of bringing the image closer to you, it just says, "Oh, by the way, you can see this much of the frame you're looking through. I hope it's in focus." Right? This is why rangefinders are kind of few and far between these days. About the only people who make rangefinders these days are Leica, because Leica owners are super traditionalists, and Fuji with their X Pro 2 because it's a poor man's Leica. To put things in perspective, a Leica M10, I believe is the current model, will net you 6 Fuji X Pro 2s. We're talking, the Fuji X Pro 2 is like $1,300. You can probably get it closer to $1,000 used. And a used Leica M10 will net you around $6,500. And that's used. Okay, so this is why some people refer to Leica as, you know, photo jewelry. And they aren't the most expensive ones out there. That's the scary part. You buy yourself a Phase 1 camera, it'll cost you as much as a BMW. $59,000 is not unheard of for a Phase 1 medium format 100 megapixel camera. It is a medium format camera. A medium format is larger than 35 millimeters. In other words, a 35 millimeter camera has a frame size of literally 36 millimeters by 24 millimeters. Okay? Medium format has 64.5 millimeters by 45 millimeters. It is the sensor is this big. It's like quadruple the size of quadruple the area of a 35 millimeter frame, and it's called medium format. Large format cameras are anything that are 4 by 5 inches or larger. And yes, they do make digital ones of those too, but they're really specialized and esoteric and finicky and hard to use because it's hard to make sensors that big because they're like sickeningly expensive. And if they use the same technology that they use for the DSLRs and for the medium format cameras, an 8x10 sensor of that size would cost millions. So, or they charge millions for it. So they use a different technology, and it's not for things that move kind of thing. So most of the time when you run into somebody who's shooting 8x10, they're shooting film. Wow. Anyway, the second category, which is, and by the way, this is in no order whatsoever. This is just the way I remembered them. The second category is the compact camera, which usually has a non-interchangeable lens. It could be a zoom, could be a fixed focus lens. There are some, you can buy some compact cameras that do not have zoom lenses. They just have a fixed lens. You can spend lots and lots of money on those too. Leica makes one too. It's called the Q. And it's got a fixed 35 millimeter lens, actually no, 28 millimeter lens on it. That's it, 28 millimeters. The zoom is whatever you happen to be wearing on your feet. So, now, the days of the general purpose point and shoot camera are declining rapidly. Only diehards like my wife, who loves her point and shoot, prefers to use it. They are being supplemented by the smart device. Yes, cell phones, smartphones are basically killing the compact camera market completely. Just to put it into perspective, if you think about it, every smartphone out in the wild contains a camera. And there are close to 2 billion smartphones out in the wild. There's nowhere near that many compact cameras. And for a vast majority of people, this meets their needs because they're not photo buffs. And it's always a camera you have. The best camera is the one that's always on you. So I am not such a prude to say that I never take pictures with this. I take pictures with this because it happens to be handy. Will I hang them in a museum? I doubt it. But you never know. The technology changes. Engineers love to change stuff. So we're going to go quickly over the just the details of them. So DSLR and mirrorless. So DSLR, digital single lens reflex cameras. They look like a film SLR. They have a mirror box. They have an interchangeable lens. They will have some sort of prism mechanism, then a viewfinder that lets you look through the lens that you are taking a photograph with. Now, a mirrorless camera is a type of interchangeable lens camera that does away with the mirror box. And basically what it's doing is it's constantly reading off the sensor in the digital camera and feeding an electronic viewfinder as for you to see through. It could be a screen on the back of the camera, or it could be a traditional hold up to your eye viewfinder. I've been using mirrorless cameras for years. They have the advantage of being generally a lot smaller than DSLRs, body-wise. If you use mirrorless cameras that are full frame, in other words, their sensor is the size of a frame of 35 millimeter film, they will tend to take the great big full frame lenses, which kind of sort of negates the benefit of the smaller bodies. So the ones that really get the benefit are the ones that use the crop sensor. Nothing wrong with full frame sensor cameras. They have their place. Okay? If you happen to be doing portraits or you need lots and lots and lots and lots of pixels, a full frame camera is probably right for you, because the bigger sensor will give you much shallower depth of field. In other words, the background will be more blurry and soft while your subject remains in focus, isolating the subject from the background. Okay? Huh? Say again so I can repeat for the audience at home.
Oh, that's why you're taking pictures of individuals, not portraits. You're taking portraits.
Yes, for portraits you want it. It's right.
Portrait.
Smaller, like point-and-shoot cameras, and even smartphones, which have tiny, tiny sensors. The smartphones get away with portraits of that style because they fake it in software. And I'm going to get to that when I get to smart devices. I'll talk about this a little bit more because this is a special case of photography. So, as a rule, they all have interchangeable lenses, both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Mirrorless cameras, since they do not have a mirror box, their native lenses tend to be a lot closer to the sensor than equivalent DSLR lenses, because the DSLR has to allow for this mirror that's got to flap up and down. Okay? So the lenses are designed to focus over a certain flange distance. Flange distance being the distance from the back mount of the lens to the sensor inside the camera. If you take a DSLR and you open it up, you'll see the little mirror inside and you'll see the box it sits in. If you open up a mirrorless camera, the sensor's almost right up to your face, right up to the flange. It's very close, which gives mirrorless cameras a small advantage. They can mount pretty much any lens you can think of with an adapter. It's just a tube. Granted, most of the time you're going to be shooting the camera in manual mode or maybe aperture mode when you do that, but you can recycle old glass, and that's a thing with mirrorless camera owners. They'll buy old manual focus lenses from who knows what brand. I happen to have a set of old Canon FD lenses at home that I use on my mirrorless cameras with adapters. They're great lenses, and I picked them up for next to nothing. I got them like some of the prices I paid for them range from $35 to about $89, and they're in great shape. They're just manual focus lenses. I put my camera in aperture priority mode. Basically tell it, I've got a lens, trust me. Because normally the electronic says, don't shoot anything if you don't have a lens on. But I say, trust me, there's a lens there. Because there's no contacts between the tube and the lens and the camera when you put the tube in between. And even so, with an old Canon FD lens, it has no electronic contacts anyway. So I have to tell it, trust me, there's a lens. And they take great pictures. Anyway, they also mirrorless cameras, as a rule, as well as DSLRs, have the capability of recording images in RAW, or what is also known as the native format of the camera. Basically, a straight output of the data from the sensor without processing. We're going to talk about that more in the advanced part of the class. Okay? And mirrorless have been, DSLRs have been big for quite a while. But now the mirrorless cameras are starting to make a lot of inroads. Sony is dominating the full-frame mirrorless market at the moment. So much so that they finally got Canon and Nikon last year at Photokina to announce full-frame mirrorless cameras. For the longest time, Canon and Nikon did not announce these cameras because they were afraid of these cameras poaching the market for their full-frame DSLRs. But they have now both introduced two cameras. The Canon has introduced the Canon R, a 33 megapixel camera, and the RP, which is a 24 megapixel camera. And Nikon has introduced the Z, or if you're British, Z7, and the Z6, which are respectively 45 and 24 megapixel cameras. I myself am looking to get a Z7 for my abstract work, because the galleries that I'm talking to about displaying my art want me to print it 5 feet long on a side, 60-inch prints, and I need lots and lots and lots and lots of pixels to make that happen. Now the shots that got them interested I took with a Hasselblad X1D medium format camera that Hasselblad was kind enough to loan me 2 years ago, and that's a 50 megapixel camera. And why don't I get one of those? Because it's $13,000.
Yeah, it's not gonna change, right?
Yeah, well, for $10,000 less, I get the Z7.
Why don't you go for a used A7R2? Why don't you go for a used A7R2?
Because I'm angry at Sony.
Okay.
And their colors are okay, but the Nikon colors are a little nicer, at least when I manipulate them. Anyway, as I mentioned, mirrorless is making big inroads now, and the market is pretty much dominated by Canon, Nikon, and Sony, and that order changes daily, depending on how you look at it. Whether it's mirrorless, Sony's in front with the other two way in back. If you're looking at DSLRs, Sony's not in the race because they stopped making DSLRs. They only make mirrorless cameras now, and but they have a 5-year head start on the other two for pro-level cameras. In mirrorless.
Now, when you said full frame, that generally equates to a manual camera, is that correct?
Well, it's the same. The sensor has the same size as a frame of 35 millimeter film, meaning there's no crop factor on your lenses. You don't have to multiply the length of your lenses by anything. You know, when you buy one of the less expensive DSLRs that has like what they call a DX sensor or a crop sensor, they'll tell you, oh yeah, well your lenses are 18 to 55, but in reality it's 28 to 75 because your lens is designed to illuminate the area of a 36 by 24 millimeter frame of film, but you're only taking the middle 2/3 of it. Remember, this is a close-up. Same thing in reverse. Now you're only looking at this bit in the middle, as opposed to the whole image that the whole image circle that the lens projects.
Yeah, the sensor's not looking through the whole glass, it's just looking through the middle of the glass.
Right, which makes your lenses longer by default. So anyway, getting back to compact cameras, again, this is the dying breed. They also be called point and shoots. They generally tend to be very easy to use automatic functions. You know, this is why they're point and shoot. Hand it to anybody, they can take a decent picture because it's all automatic. It autofocuses. It makes all the decisions for you. You don't really need to know anything about photography. Just spray and pray, you know, and every so often you'll get a good one, you know. But you can get expensive models that have full manual override, letting you take over the automatic functions and let you do all the work. And RAW support. It's possible to do that as well. You cannot change the lenses. Some allow you to screw on adapters that will change the focal length of the fixed lens mounted on your camera, making it wider or more tele, but that's a compromise. It's always a compromise. It's not the same as a dedicated lens for the function you're looking to do. You know, screwing on a magnifying glass onto the front of your lens to make it telephoto is not the same as taking that lens off and putting a telephoto lens designed to be that way. You know, that's like taking your '64 Beetle and sticking a whale tail on the back of it and calling it a Porsche. You know, they're both German. They're made by the same company, but it's not quite the same. Anyway, as I said, these are rapidly being replaced by smart devices. Okay? So, smart devices, smartphones, tablets, etc. These are the most popular cameras in the world. As I said, there's approximately 2 billion in play at any given moment in time right now. And if it were up to Apple and Google, there would be 7 billion in play. They would start handing them to infants as they are born. Okay? As I said before, they're very convenient. They're always in your pocket. They are, for the most part, completely software-based, more so than a compact camera or even a DSLR, because you have no dedicated camera controls on your smart device. There are none. It's all soft. It's all, it's on the screen. Here's the button I press on the screen. Some phones will let you press the volume button to take a picture, but that's just repurposing a button that was there for something else. It's not the actual take a picture button. There's no shutter release on your camera. Plus, they're also running a general purpose operating system, as opposed to a DSLR or a mirrorless camera or even a compact camera, which is running a dedicated operating system that is just for running a camera. And a ways back, they were trying to do some work on developing cameras that were running general purpose operating systems, so that now third-party developers can develop features and have app stores just like a phone does to give you new functions. But it never took off because no one wanted the big lump of the lens on the back of, as long as the lens stayed like this, no one cared. But if you had the big lump of the lens, it started bothering people because they couldn't keep it in their pocket. It was hitting them in the leg, or it made their pants look unsightly. We can't do very much for the unwashed masses. So, it is possible to do onboard editing on these devices. I happen to have a very nice app that I use from Google called Snapseed. And whenever I take something, I will run it through Snapseed to give it a little kick. It's very point and shoot. I want to do this tool. There's not a lot of gauges, not a lot of weird controls. You just kind of apply it. There's also looks. So like in Instagram that has looks, you can apply a look to Instagram. That's a thing now where they're trying to, since lots of people use Instagram, they're trying to make some of the software that you use to manipulate photos be more Instagram-like, because it helps the unwashed masses to understand this better than actually learning photography and learning what an exposure control is and learning what white balance is and and noise reduction. Use this filter.
Yeah.
It's a filter.
Settings.
It's just settings, right? And it's whatever some guy somewhere decided looked cool for you instead of you picking what looks cool. Okay. They do have wireless connectivity, which makes it easy to share stuff. So, we are, and also the software is generally very inexpensive. On the order of 99 cents. Maybe $2. You get a really fancy schmancy one, you might pay $5. It's not the same as a lot of the other stuff we use. Some of them are free. Snapseed's free. Anyway, and just for the record, despite what Apple says, Android is #1 in the world, and iPhone is #2. As iPhone is considered to be a luxury device. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of Chinese-made Android phones that come at all price points. So when you have countries like India that only a tiny, tiny fraction of the top percenters can afford an iPhone, the vast majority of their people, which is a large chunk of the population of the earth, basically use cheap Android phones.
The luxury of the iPhone is basically the luxury of paying more for the same thing.
Exactly. I myself have gotten off the iPhone treadmill. Okay, so this is a OnePlus 6T, which is it's not Samsung, and it's not any of the Chinese brands. It's another brand.
It's not a Huawei, but
It's not a Huawei,
yeah.
but
OnePlus 3T.
yes, this one they refer to it as the giant killer because it has pretty much the same functionality as an iPhone XS, but it cost me $570 unlocked. I didn't have to. I could put it in. I can run it on any network I want to. When I go to Europe, I just pop out the SIM and put in another SIM, and I can be talking in Europe. I'm not locked by anything.
I think that carries dual SIMs, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't checked.
Yeah, because mine has dual SIMs.
I don't think the 6T doesn't have dual SIMs. It only has one SIM slot. I'll have to double check.
Yeah, because usually the second SIM slot is preserved for a memory card.
Mm-hmm.
But since it's basically just onboard storage.
Yeah, I have 256 gigs of onboard storage on this thing.
Yeah.
I don't. Someone was asking me, "Does I have a SIM card?" I go, "Why?" I have 256 gigs. I go, "Yeah, there's no reason why."
This phone is 3 years old and it came with 120.
Yep.
128.
So, the last question is, which one is best? And though it sounds like a cop-out, the answer is it depends. What kind of images are you planning to shoot? Where are they going to end up? Are they ending up on the web? Are they ending up on your wall? Are they ending up on the side of a building? Strangely enough, ending up on the side of the building actually requires less megapixels than hanging on your wall. Do you know what the average megapixel size is for a billboard?
10?
4.
4? Wow.
4 megapixels to print a billboard. Because a billboard is not designed to be scrutinized at this distance. Okay? It is designed to be seen from, as Robin Williams said, hundreds of yards away. Okay? You know, you're supposed to look at it from all the way over here, all the way over there. Not up close. Up close, it looks terrible. Now, big prints hanging in art galleries are designed to be scrutinized at close distances by art people who are really picky about stuff. Especially considering what some people charge for those large prints. Yeah, at Basel, if you get into the second stage ring or even the first stage outer ring of Basel, you're selling pieces of art for $10,000 and $12,000 a piece. I saw one guy who was selling basically photographs he took. He was taking aerial photographs, but he avoided the whole drone problem by using a kite. There's no FAA restrictions on flying a kite. And he had a 6-foot kite that he would hang a Sony camera off of, and he would take aerial photographs. And he would make 8-foot by 4-foot prints. Literally the size of a sheet of plywood. And they averaged around $10,000 each. And he came to his booth with 25 prints, and he ended the show with $250,000 in his pocket. Less the $10,000 he paid for the booth.
What kind of camera was he strapping onto that kite?
6,500.
Oh yeah?
That's 6,500. Now,
With a wide angle lens?
with a wide angle lens, yeah. Now, you might say, well, why was he using such a low resolution camera to do that? And it's because flying it in the kite. He could put a higher one. I think he might have gone up to an A7R, an A7R3 or something like that now to get more pixels out of it because they're now small enough because he couldn't get the DSLRs up there, so he started with an A6500, but I think he's moved up to an A7R3, which has like 43 or 44 megapixels, something in that zone.
I think it's 42.
42, 40, yeah, like close to 43, 42 megapixels, which will get those big ones. But again, these are designed to be viewed several feet away, not very close. These are like wall murals.
Yeah, I wonder how you landed that kite.
Huh?
Numerous times when you're landing the kite.
Oh, this is why he has gaffers and interns. They catch the kite.
Okay.
He doesn't drop it in the water. It gets reeled in. They have this whole system, and then he's got a custom radio controlled gimbal mount. So he's got his boys and girls flying the kite for him while he's running a gimbal mount with an iPad on it, like as if it were a drone, and he's swiveling around and controlling his camera. It's a custom design. He built it himself.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why not just use a drone, but then you're right, it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, and there's no FAA restrictions.
Right.
So he doesn't have to pay for FAA licenses, and he can be near an airport and do this because it's guaranteed it's never going to get into the airport's way.
Right.
Because a drone cannot be flown within a couple of miles of an airport, just in case it gets caught into a gust of wind or something like that. Or if you're flying at the wrong height, you might get sucked into the jet engine and cause the plane to crash. So, and just to finish it off, if you're going to print, how big are you going to print, and what are you going to print on? Depending on the medium you print, you might need more resolution or you might need less resolution. For example, if you're printing 16 by 20, you're going to need like around, and you want it to be super sharp, or even 20 by 30, you're going to want at least 24 megapixels to print at that resolution. But if you're printing on canvas, you can print on canvas, on cloth. You can get away with less megapixels on the same side. Yeah, you can get away with less megapixels on the same image because the medium doesn't allow for real tight printing because you have the mesh of the cloth messing things up. Again, those are good for seeing at a distance. So for the purposes of the class, I make the following assumptions. You're going to be using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Okay? Your images are destined for online or small prints. And by small prints, I mean like smaller than 16 by 20. 16 by 20 or less. Not 5-footers. Okay? For the beginners, you're going to probably be saving your images as high-quality JPEGs. For the advanced users, I would like you, if you start to use RAW files. And we're going to talk about that in the advanced class. Because basically, you're going to learn how to unship the warp drive on your... you're going to learn how to unlock the warp drive on your camera when you use RAW files. Okay? And I would prefer that you do your post-processing on your computer on a nice big screen as opposed to doing it on your phone or your tablet at the last minute. Okay?
This is downloading it from the chip from the camera into the computer and playing with it in the computer.
Yes, yes. I want you guys to do that because even if it's just for minimal things like a little bit of cropping, you like everything is about it, but just do a little judicious cropping to get rid of like that elbow in the corner or whatever. We will be talking about that in the beginner class as the months go on. Okay? We will talk about basic editing, judicious cropping. We're going to next class we're going to go over like the parts of the camera and what they do and how they affect the photo. But we're going to be talking about how to do image editing and judicious image editing. I'm not a big fan of completely transforming an image unless that's your goal. Like you're trying to produce a piece of art. I'm a big fan of let the photography be the art, not the labor you put into after you took the picture to turn it into something else. Unless, of course, that is your goal. That you don't want to, you're not trying to recreate reality, you're trying to create your own reality. And I have examples. I've done all that. I've done both of those kinds of photographs. And my preference is to try and capture things as they are. Try and find the image out there and capture it, not make it. Okay? And by not make it, I mean take a picture of something and then filter the hell out of it until it turns into something cool. You know? I'm totally against photo editor abuse. Okay? But, and that's easy to do with those filter-based ones. You can apply like 17 filters or something, and oh, that looks cool. Anyway, so starting into the advanced class, this is going to go kind of quick. So we're going to be finishing on time tonight, I think, especially since only one person submitted their challenge picture. So we're going to judge the challenge pictures next month, this month and next month's. You need to all make up your and I don't care if you've done them before, do them again because it gives you a chance to try something different. Show me how you've improved if you've already done these. Okay? So, advanced class, we're going to talk about raw images. No, this is not porn. Okay? Nor is it artistic nudity either. We are actually talking about using a camera's ability to save photographs in the native output of the sensor. Which, we're all IT people here. This is basically an array. It's a great big array. And it contains the actual numbers generated by the digital sensor in the camera for the color values at each point, for red, green, and blue. Later on, I'll talk about how that happens, because there's quite a bit of mojo that happens to make that file be produced. But suffice it to say that a raw file is the sensor data, unaltered. It's unviewable to regular file image viewers. You have to have something that can read the format. And the formats tend to be unique to each brand of camera. Nikon has NEF files. Canon has CR2 files. Sony has ARW files. Pentax uses now the Adobe DNG format, the digital negative format, which is which Adobe is pushing as an industry standard. Leica uses that one as well. Okay. Hasselblad uses their triple F format. What is it that Phase uses? Phase uses their own weird format too. So it's the native format of the camera, and it's different between sensors. Even though Sony makes the most of the sensors, it's the surrounding electronics that generates the file, and the file format is unique to each camera company. Now,
let me ask you, what's your take on that camera that, I forgot the name of it, but it's got like 15 or 16 different lenses on it?
yes, I've actually played with that camera.
Computational photography.
Computational photography.
Right.
That, I've actually played with that camera.
How's the output on it?
Well, okay, so that camera is what they call a computational photographic camera. And it's very similar to what you have on a lot of these smartphones that have two lenses. But in this case, the camera is like, it looks like a fat smartphone, like a great big, almost a tablet. It's between the size of a smartphone, a big smartphone, and a tablet. But it is the thickness of about 2.5 smartphones. It's really thick. And it's called the Light Digital Field Camera. That's the name.
Yeah, the L6.
The L16.
It has 16 lenses.
It has 16 lenses on it. Okay, it has 16 lenses on the front. And when you take a photograph, it actually has the capability to change the focus point after you took the photograph. Because all the lenses capture distance information. And what happens is that the software inside the camera puts the image together. But it is not the raw file that it produces. The best example I can give you, and it's a really nerdy one, I'm sorry, is Schrodinger's cat. Have you ever heard of that? Schrodinger's cat? Erwin Schrödinger was one of the early physicists who was studying quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the study of subatomic particles that are way below the size of electrons, protons, and neutrons. These study quantum particles, quarks, particles that have charge and spin and all kinds of weird properties. And the problem with these quantum particles, which they're trying to use in quantum computing, by the way, is that you don't know what their state is until you observe it, right? You can't know what state what is their charge and what is their spin. Are they spinning clockwise or counterclockwise? Are they positive or are they negative, right? You can't know until you observe it. So the theory goes is that until you observe it, they're both spinning clockwise and anti-clockwise, and they're both positive and negative. You don't know what they are until you observe it. And the example that Erwin Schrödinger gave to his students was a thought experiment. He didn't actually do this, it's just think about this. And he said, when you have a box that is radiation proof, nothing can get in, no radiation. You put a cat inside the box. In the box, you also put a glass vial of a noxious gas that could kill the cat if it gets cracked open. You also put in it a Geiger counter and a spring-loaded hammer tied to the Geiger counter. Now, the Geiger counter is tuned so that if you open the lid of the box, there's a 50-50 chance that the trip hammer will go off and kill the cat. Without opening the box, what is the state of the cat? The cat is both alive and dead until you open the box, and it commits either way. And that was a thought experiment. He's not some animal. He doesn't hate animals or anything like that. It was just a thought experiment. It could have been a mouse, but he chose a cat. Okay? And it became known as Schrodinger's cat. So there's a lot of memes about it on the internet. You can look it up. There's actually one shirt I almost got myself because it was just so nerdy, and it says, it's like a wanted poster. It says, "Wanted, dead and alive, Schrodinger's cat." You know? But anyway, the files coming out of this Light 16 camera are like Schrodinger's cat. They're in flux until you decide to commit it to a fixed format. The actual raw file can be changed back and forth. You can move the focus points after the photograph has been taken. You can change the exposure, which you can do normally, but changing the focus after you took the shot. I take the picture, I go home, 2 weeks later, I decide I don't want to focus on the statue in front, I want to focus on the people next to it. Yeah, I can do that. It's really cool. But they ran into a lot of technical difficulties trying to get the camera out the door. And their Kickstarter backers were kind of upset because they were 2 years late. So this was one of those Kickstarter stories where they started with grandiose dreams, but it proved to be a little more technically daunting than what was expected. And when the people got it, when they realized, like, I have to run this through my computer in order to be able to share it on Facebook. Well, that's that, because they wanted it to be like a super smartphone. Take super pictures, but be like a smartphone. And it was this thing, that you needed big hand. Dainty women had a hard time holding this thing because they were like, it was like this giant sandwich they had to hold.
And how was the output on it?
I would have to say the images were pretty good. They weren't very high resolution. I'm gonna have to tell you, 15 megapixels was the best it could do.
And how about noise and low light capability?
Not that good. Not that good. It was first step. It was a first iteration.
Because I was reading about it, because I was interested in it initially, and they said that they were going to be tweaking it with a lot of software updates.
Yeah,
down
this is why it's also called computational photography. Just like this, the photographic functions are all handled through software. So you go and you want to add a new function, it's just code. You just add the code, you have a new function. And they're the same thing. They were computational photography. So they weren't relying on the mechanics of a camera to make it work. They were relying on a really powerful computer behind the camera to do all the work.
But they're still around. They haven't gone under, right?
Mm-mm. They've gotten another round of VC funding.
Okay.
So they are working on the Mark II, which is going to be thinner, lighter, and a little easier to use. And they're working really hard on the software to make it a lot more friendly. Anyway, basically, you want to think of a RAW file as like a digital negative. Okay? It's like a negative, a film negative, but it's digital. And yes, Adobe actually has a format called DNG, which stands for digital negative. Anyway, the advantages of RAW files are: 1. All of the details and the dynamic range that your camera is capable of is preserved in the file. Dynamic range, that's a new term for some people here. Dynamic range is the camera's ability to retain details in the very bright parts of the image and the very dark parts of the image at the same time. The more dynamic range a camera has, the deeper into the brights and the deeper into the blacks it can go and still retain details without things becoming black. Have you ever taken a picture of someone outside and they're perfectly exposed? It's a beautiful sunny day. Beautiful sunny day. And you take a picture of somebody outside. The camera has exposed them perfectly, but the sky, which was blue when you were taking the picture, turns out white in the photograph because the sky was much brighter than the subject you were photographing. So the camera, favoring the subject in front of you as opposed to the sky, lets the sky get blown out in the highlights to light them up, and all of a sudden what was dim shapes in the back suddenly goes completely pitch black. You lost it in the blacks. Things get lost because it's outside the dynamic range of the camera. A high dynamic range camera can retain the sky while you're photographing somebody in front of you with maintaining everything happening in the deep shadow at the same time. Now, if your camera's not that awesome, and there are very few that are that awesome, you can get around it using lighting and other things. For example, sometimes you see people using flash in broad daylight, which sounds like a very counterintuitive thing. They are, 1, banking on the dynamic range stored in their RAW files to help them with this. And the other thing what they do is, let's say for example, that outdoor portrait I was talking about, in a bright sunny day, and you've got kids wearing white, okay? That's going to be horrible. So what you do is, in that case, you expose for the sky. You expose your photograph so your sky comes in perfect. And then you use flash to light up the people in front, because they're going to be dark. You use a flash to light them up, and all of a sudden you've got balanced the light in the front with the light in the back, and you have a beautiful portrait of someone wearing white clothes in broad daylight and beautiful blue skies and fluffy white clouds behind them. And that's how you balance these things. But using RAW files helps you with that because it gives you a lot of leeway to be able to bring those details back into play. Okay? This is what I mean by it is more flexible in post-production work. You can get away with editing a lot more. And a picture that might be a marginal image in JPEG as a RAW file can probably be massaged into something pretty nice. You can probably rescue it, you know, if you shoot RAW. There's a lot more chance for you to rescue a file if it's a RAW file than if it's a JPEG. Think of it this way. A RAW file is like a negative. It's the original. A JPEG, if you're telling your camera to save a JPEG, it's like a Polaroid. It's a print. It's already been processed, and the negative's been thrown away. You can tell the camera to save a RAW file and a JPEG file at the same time. So you will have the processed version in case you need to shoot those away quick to family and friends, and keep the RAW files for you to play with to make them into something really nice. But those are choices, and these cameras give you these choices. Okay? Now, not all is beer and Skittles using RAW files. Okay? It's not the end-all, be-all of things. 1, it's an additional step of processing that you have to do. You have to turn the raw files into something that can be seen by the general public. Okay? Not everyone is going to be using the same raw software you are using, nor will they have the profiles you use to create the image. You have to save it as something they can see. A JPEG, a PNG, a TIFF file if you're going to go print, whatever. Okay? They are much, much bigger. And the way you can tell is in your camera, if you're shooting JPEG and you have an empty card, the camera will tell you how many shots roughly you have available. For example, on my Fuji, shoots 24 megapixel images. If I put it into JPEG, my 64 meg card will let me capture close to, and I'm talking about fine, high quality JPEGs, I'm going to be capturing close to 1,600 images. I put it to RAW, and it drops down to about 650. It's that big a difference. Because a JPEGs were invented back in the days of dial-up modems. People wanted to see photographs that have more colors than what could be seen in a GIF file, a GIF or GIF file, okay? GIF files, which were originally designed for transmitting images, only could handle 256 colors. They wanted something that could handle millions and millions of colors. But they needed them to be small so they could be transmitted over a 56K modem. And JPEG, which stands for the Joint Photographic Engineering Group, which was a subset of the IEEE, the International Electrical Engineering something or other, okay, came up with the specification to be able to do high color images that would be highly compressible. But, and I'm beeping and it's getting recorded, great. Anyway, the problem is that the way they achieve compressibility is by going through the file. You know, you say, I want a highly compressed JPEG because I want it as small as possible. It'll go through the file, check the color values of nearby pixels, find something that's an average of what you're looking for, throw away all the other pixels and say, okay, these other pixels that I just threw away, they're going to be the same as this one. And the more time you save the file, it does this every single time. If you know how they say, oh, remember to save your work. That's a bad idea with JPEG because every single time you save a JPEG, you're throwing away more pixels, and you're throwing away more pixels, and you're throwing away more pixels. One of the humorous anecdotes that I've heard is that if you take a JPEG file of a 110-year-old woman and save it at high compression 50 times, you'll take 80 years off of her. Because the details will start going away. You'll start losing wrinkles. You'll start using lines and pixels because they're going to start throwing away pixels. It's not going to be the same as if you edited her to look younger, but just by doing that act of save, and eventually it'll get to be where they'll look like Barbie dolls, just plastically looking skin and things like that. You'll lose details that badly. So you don't want to be saving JPEGs over and over and over and over and over and over and over again because you start losing details. RAW files, if you export it to a JPEG, every time you export a file from a RAW file, it's a first generation copy. So if you want to make changes, don't edit the JPEG, go back to the RAW, make the changes there, and export it again. And you'll get a first generation copy that you could use. As long as you keep them first generation, you'll be okay. If you start saving that JPEG over and over and over again, you'll start losing data. Because it's a lossy specification, and that's how it saves space. Okay? Anyway, getting back to the disadvantages of RAW files, because the files are much larger, you have to worry about having larger storage cards in your camera in order to do the same number of pictures that you had with JPEGs. And you also have to worry about larger storage capacity in your computer when you're processing your images, unless you cull ruthlessly and throw away what you don't use. I'm too much of a fraidy cat to do that. I will cull ruthlessly before I display, but I will keep everything. Because you never know when someone in the future will find out a way to fix this. Engineers love to change things. And the last one is RAW files are not a cure for bad photography. It helps, but Don't just say, oh, I'll just fix it in post. Don't get into that habit. Try and get it right in the camera. Okay? So, the one component you're going to need to be able to process a RAW file is a RAW converter. RAW converter is a piece of software that will translate the native file format of whatever camera you're using into something that regular people can see, like JPEGs and PNGs and TIFF files and all the other open formats that everyone else can read in their browsers and stuff like that. You generally want to use JPEGs and PNGs for the web. TIF, which is tag image file format, that's a file format from the printing business, from printing books. And it's a lossless specification. Remember I told you that JPEG files were lossy, they throw away pixels? TIFF files save everything. They save layers, they save everything. They don't throw away pixels. And those files can get pretty big. But they're the best ones for sending big prints, making big prints because you don't lose data. Anyway, most print shops will take TIF files, especially if you're doing a big print. But for the little bitty stuff, like 4x6, you can send them, you go to Walgreens, you can do JPEGs. Go, that's a small print. But if you're doing big stuff, larger than 20 by 30 inches, you're going to want to be sending that as a TIF file, because that way you won't lose anything on the way over. They can't handle a RAW file because the RAW file has no, you have to have the RAW file and then the changes file that you applied to the RAW file. It's a delta file. It's stored separately as what they call a sidecar. They don't ever make, these applications never write to the RAW file. They write to a sidecar so that you can actually make a million changes or something and undo it all. Just come back to the original and start all over again. Okay?
Is the Capture One? I know somebody puts out Capture One.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the brands now, real quick. Okay?
Just wondering if you had any experience with it, because I haven't used it yet. Because I've always shot.
Capture One is awesome, especially for portrait work. Okay, so they range in price from free to about $500. Okay. Adobe products are now by subscription only. You have to sign up to Creative Cloud, and that will cost you anywhere between $9.95 a month to $50 a month, depending on what level you get. The photographer's package, which is Lightroom, Photoshop, and a Behance account with 20 gigs of storage. And Behance is their online gallery. Okay, costs you $9.95 a month. You don't have to pay for upgrades. You don't have to pay for when a new version comes out, whatever. It's just, you just get upgrades are cycled automatically. You pay $10 a month. Forever. As long as you keep using it. And the application will call the mothership every single time you try and use it. We're almost done.
No, I'm getting a text.
Okay. Anyway, and the applications also range in complexity from Instagram style, easy to use, filter based things to ones that have all kinds of controls that require you to understand the actual technicalities of photography and image processing. So there's something for all tastes available in RAW converters. Okay? And they are available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. Rumor has it, because Hollywood has been going Linux in a big way and writing their own software, that some of these big software houses are getting ready to release their products on Linux because they were under the mistaken impression that if they released it on Linux, they had to give it away for free. No, that's only if you release it in the GPL or if you use GPL components in your application. Because if you use a GPL piece, you're required by the GPL to give the whole thing away. But if you license it under another license, like say the BSD license or the MIT license, you can pull in BSD and MIT license components and use it in yours and not have to be forced to give it away for free. You can if you want to, but you're not forced to do it. So rumor has it that a large company whose name means mud, okay, is going to be releasing their cloudy group of applications on Linux. Don, you look confused. You know who I'm talking about? Adobe. Adobe means mud.
Remember Adobe Huts? Made with mud?
Yes. But anyway, That's a rumor. Anyway, RAW converters. So, talking about RAW converters, like I said, you have Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. A Photoshop being the great big photo editing application, and Lightroom being the 20% of Photoshop you will use 80% of the time to process your photos. Available as part of the Creative Cloud, Mac and Windows, anywhere between $10 and $50 a month, depending. If you're lucky and you get like a teacher subscription, you can get the $50 a month for $30 a month. So I keep that one because my wife and daughter use it. I don't use it anymore. Other contenders in this space are Skylum Luminar, which is more along the lines of you pay once for it and then you get upgrades, and you don't have to pay for the upgrades. They will upgrade you for free, but they do have a subscription service for their training videos and for like stock images and filters and things like that. You know, anything you want add-ons, you have to buy the add-ons kind of thing. That's the kind of model they're using. So they hook you with the fact that you only have to pay for it once, but there's stuff you can pay for regularly to get it, especially if you want to use their training videos and stuff like that. You can buy packages, and they have sales. Sometimes you get it like they normally go for like $149, but I've seen it go as low as $79. And they're pretty nice. I've tried it. It's good. On One Photo 20XX, because they name them after the year it's released. So the current one is On One Photo 2019.1. So that one is very similar. Both of these are filter-based designs, like Instagram style, but On One has developer modules that can get a little more technical if you need it to be. Okay. Next on Hill Street Blues is you have some freebies from Canon. The Canon Digital Photo Pro is included with all their cameras. It's their RAW converter. It's free, but it only works with Canon cameras. Okay, so if you have a Canon camera, you can use this. Okay. Oh, that's another thing. When a new camera is released, the software may not be ready for it on release day. So like for example, when Nikon introduced the Z series, the Z6 and the Z7, RAW converters are now catching up and being able to produce JPEGs and stuff from their RAW images. So up until now, everyone who's been posting stuff has been either running it through a DNG converter or has been just basically exporting JPEGs right from the camera to be able to show stuff. But now the RAW converters are starting to support them natively. So camera support tends to lag a little bit after camera releases with RAW converters. So that's another thing you have to think about. So the price of early adoption is you have to kind of wait until the RAW converters catch up to you before you can start really using the camera for what it's. Nikon NX, that one's a nightmare. They charge money for it. They shouldn't, but they do. And it's based off of the Nix software suite, which got bought by Google, and now it got bought by DxO. So we don't know what's going to happen with this one now. Capture One Pro. It's made by Phase One, who make medium format cameras. It's free with Phase One cameras and with Sony cameras. Sony has gotten into a deal with them. The Sony version is Sony only. The regular Capture One Pro works with all kinds of cameras. It costs around anywhere from $350 to $500, depending on if you're upgrading or buying a new version or you're trading in something. That one is really, really geared towards portrait and studio work. It's got tethered capture, all kinds of crazy stuff, okay, for working in studios. It's really studio oriented. It's also designed to be run on 2 monitors. So,
as far as like if you take a lot of, let's say you take 200 pictures in RAW, and you just wanted to you edit like 4 or 5 special ones.
Mm-hmm.
Does it batch convert?
Yes.
The other
Yes.
ones? You
Yes.
have to go one by one by one.
No. You can queue them all up and then let them run.
Okay.
You add them to a queue. You said queue this one, queue this one, queue this one, queue this one. Run. Boop, 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 boop. Where do you want it? Do you want to put watermark on it? Blah blah blah.
And Capture One Pro does that.
Yes. Yes. It is fully designed for a professional studio environment. So it will do batch processing to let you get the workout. It's designed to let you get the workout quickly. Okay? And last but not least are some of the other freebies. We have these two. The first 2 here are open source. projects, Darktable and Raw Therapy. They are available on all platforms, and they are completely free. Completely and totally free. My last exhibit was all processed using Raw Therapy. My last 2 exhibits. Raw Therapy is on the extreme complex end of the simplicity scale. You kind of have to know what you have to learn it. It's got kind of a steep learning curve to use, but once you learn it and you get it done, you can actually apply your looks very easily. You just put together what you want to do to a shot and save it as a preset, and then you just go in, pick, apply the preset, boom, cue it, out you go. Done. It lacks watermarking, but you can run through another application to do that. There's a few other applications for those kinds of things. The last one is Hasselblad Focus. This is by the Swedish guys that make medium format cameras. It's native to their cameras and it works, but if you happen to have a Mac, their software will actually work with other cameras besides Hasselblad cameras. The Windows version only works with Hasselblad cameras, but because Macs natively support RAW conversion as an operating system function, they take advantage of that conversion engine and add additional cameras to their service. With Windows, they're not licensed to do that. So if you have the Windows version, Focus is only good for Hasselblad cameras, but if you have the Mac version, it is for many different kinds of cameras. Okay? So, next up is monthly challenge number 2. Hot on the heels of the monthly challenge number 1, selfie, we have shiny. Photograph something reflective that is not a mirror. You got that, Donnie? Okay, great. Okay, so quickly switching a moment to... I know. It's actually 6:30. It's 20 up, but we're almost done. Yeah. I'm going to switch over now a second to our other view. So we're now looking at... Hang on. Let me close the slideshow down. Okay. So this is the only selfie that anyone uploaded. So y'all need to step up, load your selfies, and then you got to do your shinies too. Next meeting is the 3rd Wednesday in March. I will try really hard to send reminders out the week before so everyone remembers. You are welcome to join us online or in-house. I hope you all enjoyed today's show. And we'll see about the shots next week, next month. There you go. All right. Thank you. And if anyone has suggestions for a cool theme song that won't get me in trouble with YouTube, let me know. All right? Take it easy. Take care. Peace out. Take photographs. Bye.
All right.
Thank you, Carlos.